My name is Grace Walters. I'm 31 years old, and for the past 3 years I've been living in a tiny one-bedroom flat in Notting Hill. I'm a textile designer, and in 4 days I'm set to debut my first solo collection at London Fashion Week. My days are a blur of silk samples, supplier calls, and long nights in a studio that smells like glue, caffeine, and panic. It's the life I built from scratch, one swatch at a time. At 3:12 a.m., my phone rings, cutting through the quiet like a blade. I stare at the screen, groggy, then sit up fast when I see the name Nate, my brother. He never calls, not unless something's wrong. "Grace," he says, breathless. "It's Dad." I press the phone closer to my ear. "What happened?" "He collapsed. They said it was a heart attack, a serious one. They rushed him to St. Luke's. He's been there over an hour already. The doctors don't know if he'll make it." My breath stops. Is he conscious? They're not sure. Nate answers, his voice tight, but before he passed out, he asked for you. He wanted to see you. I don't remember ending the call. My body takes over. I throw on jeans and a sweater, shove toiletries and a few outfits into a suitcase, and sit on the edge of my bed, fingers trembling as I open my laptop. I try to book the earliest flight to New York. Economy is sold out. The only ticket left is a business class one way. I click purchase. The fare is more than what I've spent on rent all year. It empties the savings I've built from late nights and freelance gigs, but I don't hesitate. My father, the same man who once built me a makeshift runway in the backyard with garden torches and string lights, is dying, and he asked for me. I can't say no to that. It's still dark when I leave the flat. I don't bother waking Karina, my roommate and creative director. Instead, I leave a short note by the espresso machine emergency I'll call when I land. But halfway down the hall, I stop. I turn back, unlock the studio door, and flick on the light. Our spring collection sketches are pinned neatly on the wall, tulle linen and cobalt blue prints blooming across the corkboard. In the center sits my signature piece, a dress made from hand-dyed recycled fibers, structured like armor but soft to the touch. Karina is there earlier than I expected, crouched over a rack of unfinished pieces. She looks up startled. "What's going on?" "My dad had a heart attack." I say, my voice brittle. "I'm flying to New York now." She frowns, setting aside the fabric. "But Grace, the show is in 5 days. You're the lead." I know I grip the handle of my suitcase. I might lose everything. She doesn't argue, just nods once and whispers, "Family is family, but time won't wait." Neither do I. At Heathrow, I try calling the hospital, desperate to hear a voice say he's stable. Each time a receptionist tells me no patient named Robert Walters has been admitted, I assume they're just overworked or that he was transferred. My hands shake as I cradle my coffee. The terminal lights blur around me. The 8-hour flight is a blur of turbulence and dread. I barely sleep. My mind loops through old arguments, missed birthdays, the last awkward phone call where Dad said he didn't understand why someone so smart would chase fabric instead of finance, but now all I hear is he asked for you. The plane lands at JFK before dawn. My phone lights up with a single message. Eric is at the gate, my cousin. I haven't seen him since he left a holiday dinner early after an argument with my dad over a failed investment. He was always loyal to the company, Walker and Walters Realty, our family's legacy and burden. I spot him near baggage claim, standing stiffly in a coat too formal for this hour. No tears, no urgency, just quiet anticipation. I rush toward him. "Where is he? How's Dad?" Eric's expression tightens. "Let's talk in the car." "I want to go to the hospital." "We'll get there," he says, avoiding my gaze. "But Mom wanted you to rest first." I stop walking. I didn't fly across the ocean to take a nap. Tell me the truth. He sighs. "It was just a minor episode, nothing life-threatening. They didn't want to worry you, but we thought if you came back, we could finally talk as a family." My heart doesn't break. It implodes quietly, so there was no heart attack. Eric hesitates. "No, just stress. But we couldn't say that over the phone." "You lied," I say, cold and even. "You played on my worst fear." "We needed you here." "For what?" He doesn't answer. I walk faster. At St. Luke's, the ER is quiet, dimly lit. I march to the front desk. Robert Walters brought in last night. I'm his daughter. The nurse frowns. Types. No patient by that name in the past 48 hours. There must be a mistake. He's critical. Please check cardiology. Another nurse shakes her head. I'm sorry. I turn to Eric. He's already walking away from the desk, pulling his coat tighter. I follow him outside. Tell me now, where is he? He turns slowly. He's home. I stare. He's fine, Grace. He didn't want to do it this way, but we had no choice. The trust, the inheritance. There are details we need to go over. My hands curl into fists. You dragged me away from the most important week of my life. Eric doesn't apologize. That's when I realized this wasn't panic. It was premeditation. And whatever's waiting for me at the family house, it isn't reunion, it's a performance. I climb into the car, my body numb, my dreams folded into the locked suitcase in the back seat. In my coat pocket, the boarding pass still peeks out my one-way ticket home, or maybe into a trap I haven't yet seen. But I see the first sign, and I won't ignore it. The front door creaks open before I even touch the handle. Someone must have seen the car pull in. My suitcase wheel clicks once against the threshold, and then I step inside. Home. Or what used to be. The house smells like cinnamon and almond. My mother's signature baking scent when company's over. The entryway has been scrubbed to perfection, the hardwood floors gleaming like glass. Nothing looks out of place, and yet everything feels off. I stop in the foyer and listen. Grace. My mother's voice drifts from the dining room, light casual as if I had just come in from a morning walk, and not a red eye across the Atlantic under the illusion that my father was dying. I follow the voice down the hallway past the same framed photos that have hung there for 20 years. Nothing has changed except me. The dining room is lit like a stage candles flicker at either end of the polished oak table. A plate of almond waffles sits at the center, my childhood favorite, though I stopped eating them years ago. The tablecloth is hand-stitched linen with floral edges, the kind my mother only uses for holidays. I stare at the spread, too elaborate for breakfast, too rehearsed for grief. Judith Walters. My mother is standing near the fireplace, her makeup flawless and hair pinned into a perfect chignon. She's wearing a cream-colored silk blouse and a smile just wide enough to suggest welcome, not warmth. Nate is already seated phone face down in front of him. Beside him sits Kelsey, his wife, who gives me a tight-lipped nod. I don't move. Where's Dad? My mother crosses the room to press a kiss to my cheek. Her perfume lingers too long. He's resting upstairs. The episode wasn't as bad as we thought. Just stress, really. I pull back. You said heart attack. She waves a hand like brushing off dust. The doctors overreacted. We were scared, and we knew how much he wanted to see you, so we asked Nate to call. You lied, I say, voice flat, and you let me believe he was dying. We needed you here, Nate says, finally looking up. You couldn't just ask. No one answers. My mother gestures toward the table. Sit, you must be tired. I don't move. What is this? She exchanges a glance with Nate. Kelsey avoids eye contact altogether. Then Judith exhales and places her hands on the back of a chair. Your grandfather's trust matures next month. As you know, you're the sole beneficiary. The Vermont property, the accounts, the investments. The total value sits around $7.8 million. I stare at her, I know. She tilts her head like a teacher disappointed in a bright student. Then you know there's a clause. You receive the full inheritance on your 32nd birthday, so long as you remain uninvolved in any formal capacity with the family business. Walker and Walters. Our family's name etched on half the commercial signs in Fairfield County. I remember the clause. Well, I also remember the look in my grandfather's eyes when he handed me the trust documents, one of warning, not celebration. You want me to change the terms, I say. We're asking you to consider transferring the estate into a family account. Nate replies, we're expanding. There's a lot of opportunity right now, but we're tight on capital. I scoff. You're asking me to fund a bailout. Kelsey winces. Judith's smile never wavers. This is your family. Grace. Your roots, your legacy. No, I say, walking slowly around the table. This is a pitch. one dressed in almond waffles and fake emergencies. Nate leans forward, elbows on the table. We're not trying to trick you. But you did, I snap. You faked a heart attack to get me on a plane. It wasn't fake, Judith says quickly. Your father did collapse. He's been under a lot of pressure. I stop at the fireplace and stare into the flames. They're too symmetrical, flickering in a perfect rhythm. Gas-controlled. Much like this conversation. You know what this house used to mean to me? I say. Sunday pancakes, crushed crayons in the kitchen drawer. Dad cheering from the bleachers during my school art shows. But now it's a boardroom with nicer curtains. Judith's tone softens. Sweetheart, you've always had a strong mind, but sometimes strength is knowing when to support the people who raised you. No, I turn, holding her gaze. Strength is knowing when I'm being played. The silence tightens. Kelsey shifts in her seat. Judith presses her hands together. The funds are just sitting there. If you moved them now, we could cover the Meadow Creek build and the equity loss from the Gateway development. And if I don't? Nate's voice hardens. We're family. We thought you'd care. I walk to the table and pick up the fork resting beside the waffles. Cold, already stiff from syrup. My favorite they remembered or pretended to. Do you even hear yourselves, I ask. This isn't love, it's leverage. Judith approaches slowly. You've always lived apart. We weren't trying to hurt you. But you did, I say, setting down the fork. And I don't think you're sorry. I think you're surprised I showed up, and even more surprised that I'm not saying yes. Nate stands. Grace, be reasonable. I am, I reply, turning to him. You're the one asking me to give up what was left to me by the only person in this family who didn't see me as a fallback plan. Judith flinches. For the first time, her expression falters. We just wanted to talk, she whispers. No, I say, backing toward the hallway. You wanted me here, so I'd be easier to corner. You can stay in your room, she offers. Get some rest. I pause at the archway. The almond scent now sickens me. This was never a reunion, I say. It was an extraction. And then I walk away. Upstairs, the air feels thinner. I shut the door behind me and slide the lock. My old bedroom smells like lavender and dust. Nothing's been touched. Not the photos, not the books, not the sketch of my first dress still pinned to the bulletin board. But I've changed. And now I know what they really want. And I won't give it easily. The guest room Kelsey used before she married Nate is still painted a pale green with a desk pushed against the window and a bookshelf lined with old textbooks and files from her time at the firm. I wait until I hear footsteps down the hall. Judith going to bed, the soft squeak of floorboards near the master room, then ease the door shut. The laptop is still there, closed, but not locked. Kelsey used to work in compliance for Walker & Walters before she shifted into a project PR role. She always kept backup drives just in case, she once told me during a Christmas dinner. Years ago, I take a breath and open the lid. The screen wakes slowly. No password prompt. A small relief. The desktop is cluttered with folders, mostly old architecture plans, payroll spreadsheets, and development timelines. I scan the screen, unsure of where to start. Then I spot it. A folder labeled AYAW, Finance, Ops, Q4. I click inside our subfolders marked by project names. Meadow Creek, Gateway, Holdings, Bridgeview Park. I open one Gateway Holdings. A PDF of investor notes, a payment schedule, and then something stranger. A scanned document titled Trustee Statement. Walters Grace. My fingers twitch. I double-click. The file opens slowly. A letterhead I recognize from our family office appears at the top. The body of the letter is brief, but formal, affirming that Grace Walters has agreed to serve as the legal trustee for the Atlas Core Initiative Fund, overseeing all allocations and investment redemptions tied to the account. There's a signature at the bottom. My name. In a handwriting that mimics mine, close enough to fool anyone who hadn't seen me sign checks or contracts. But it isn't mine. I never signed this. I never saw this document. I scroll quickly. The second page contains a scanned image of my passport. My face, my name, but the numbers are wrong. So is the expiration date. The whole image has been doctored. A cold wave passes through me. Not fear. Not yet. Just clarity. This wasn't carelessness. This was designed. I close the folder and move back up to the Master Finance directory. There, near the bottom, is a folder with no label. Just a string of letters and numbers. I click it open. Inside 3 contracts, each one structured like a basic investment agreement. Except the lender listed is a company I've never heard of. Atlas Core Ltd. It sounds vague enough to be forgettable, but professional enough to pass. I open the first file. A $2.4 million loan with repayment terms due in less than 90 days. Interest rate 17.9%. Penalty clauses. Vague, threatening everything from asset forfeiture to emergency restructuring. There's a 4th page in small font. In the event of default, named trustee assumes liability to settle through eligible estate assets. I blink. Read it again. It means if the project fails and the company can't repay the loan, I, listed as trustee, am expected to fulfill the obligation, using the inheritance, my inheritance. I feel the heat rise behind my eyes, but I don't cry. Not yet. The second contract is nearly identical, only this time tied to a company under the Meadow Creek subdivision. The third tied to a project I've never even heard of, Vireo development with plans still marked as pending. Each time the trustee listed is Grace Walters, and each time my name appears scrawled in that same near-match handwriting, I zoom in on the signature. The letters slant a little too far, left the W loops slightly longer than mine, but it would pass. To anyone else, it would pass. This is fraud, and it's not just about stealing money. It's about stealing me. I minimize the window and glance toward the hallway. The silence outside is thick. I keep the screen dimmed and return to the documents. There's more bank statements showing wire transfers from investor accounts to shell corporations, some flagged with generic consulting descriptions, others labeled as advanced disbursement, priority account. It's a maze of neutral terms and numbers designed to be ignored. But I'm not ignoring them. I start taking screenshots, each one saved to a folder I name www. Records. Protected. I move methodically, clicking saving, checking timestamps. I pull out the small flash drive I keep in my wallet, a habit I picked up in design school when I once lost 3 weeks of work to a spilled coffee mug. I transfer the screenshots, contracts, and passport scan. I encrypt the drive, then tuck it deep into my bag inside the lining of my sketch portfolio. It's ironic, really. The same case that once carried fabric samples and mood boards now holds evidence of financial manipulation. Design, it seems, has more than one kind of blueprint. I go back to the laptop one last time. In the root directory, I notice a draft email unsent. The subject line, proposal confirmation, transition of asset control. It's addressed to Bernard Lane, our family's longtime attorney. The message is short. Documents prepared and ready for signature once Grace agrees to transfer before maturity date. Legal framing consistent with trustee participation. They weren't waiting to ask. They were waiting for me to arrive so they could pressure me, so they could say it was my choice, so it would look like cooperation, not coercion. My jaw tightens. The panic starts to rise, but I push it down. They were going to let me take the fall. If this house of cards collapsed, I'd be the one holding the match. My signature, my name, my inheritance. I close the laptop softly and slide it back to where it was. No files are deleted, no changes made. Everything remains untouched on the surface. But I've seen enough to know what's beneath it. I walk quietly back to my room, the hallway cold under my bare feet. In the dim glow from the staircase, the portraits of our family look down at me. Photos from birthdays, groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, all smiling, all curated. None of them real. Back in my room, I lock the door again, sit on the bed, place the flash drive beside me like a fragile artifact. In a way, it is. It holds the truth. And for the first time since I landed, I feel steadier. I haven't been paranoid. I've been targeted. And now I have proof. Tomorrow, I'll find out just how deep this goes. But tonight, I sleep with the flash drive under my pillow, not because I'm scared it'll be taken, but because I finally know what they planned. And I'm not playing along. The last time I visited Vermont was in late spring 2 years ago. The trees lining the driveway to my grandfather's house had just begun to fill in with leaves, a soft green canopy dappling the gravel path with light. He was already in his final year, then thinner than I remembered, but still upright, still clear-eyed. His voice was softer, though, as if speaking too loudly might crack something in the air. I'd gone up for a weekend. Just me, no family, no agenda. We spent the mornings walking the perimeter of the property, his steps slow but steady, his hand gripping the wooden cane he carved himself when his hip began to fail. He never talked about the company, never asked about London. We talked about herbs, blue jays, his mother's lemon pie recipe. Safe, quiet things. On the second morning, we sat beneath the sugar maple in the back field, the one with the knot in the trunk shaped like a fox's eye. He pulled something from the inside pocket of his worn denim jacket, a small envelope green and stiff from age. It was sealed on the front in his tidy all-caps handwriting. It read, "For Grace Spring." "You'll know when it's time," he said, placing it in my palm. Not before. I didn't open it. I kept it tucked between the pages of a sketchbook when I returned to London. Life moved fast after that collection's deadlines, sleepless nights. I forgot the weight of the envelope. Until now. I find it again at the bottom of my portfolio case, wrapped in a swatch of raw silk. The green has faded slightly, but the ink is still sharp. I sit on the floor of my childhood room, legs crossed, fingers trembling slightly as I break the seal. Inside is a single sheet of parchment paper folded 3 times. A pressed maple leaf falls out, first flattened and pale gold. I set it on my knee. The letter opens with my name. Grace. If you're reading this, then things have gone the way I feared they might. I always hoped they wouldn't, but I prepared just in case. Families don't fall apart all at once. They rot from the inside out, and when enough people pretend not to see it, the damage becomes tradition. You've never been one to pretend. My throat tightens. I blink, steadying myself. People will try to tell you what loyalty looks like, that it means compromise, that it means silence. But real loyalty is telling the truth, even when it's inconvenient. I didn't leave you the inheritance because I trusted you more than the others. I left it because I knew you would ask the hard questions when no one else would. I pause, the words sitting heavy in my chest. I look out the window. The backyard is dark now, the branches outside my old window shifting slowly in the breeze. I didn't want you to carry a burden. Grace, I wanted you to carry a key. The estate, the trust, the Vermont house. It's not about money. It's about giving someone in this family a clean start, a protected space, a place where no one is pretending to be anything other than who they are. I touched the pressed leaf. He must have picked it from the tree we sat under. It still smells faintly earthy like warm bark. If the others come to you asking for access for signatures for help, you didn't volunteer. Remember, you are allowed to say no. You are not selfish for doing so. The trust isn't bait, it's a shield. Blood is not a contract. You owe them nothing. They wouldn't give freely in return. He signed it in blue ink the way he always did with his full name, Calvin Richard Walters. A name that once hung on gold plaques outside real estate offices, but here on paper it feels like something simpler, something honest. I folded the letter carefully, sliding it back into the envelope. The pressed leaf I leave on the windowsill right next to the tiny glass jar that used to hold pushpins and ribbon scraps. The light catches it faintly, casting a ghost of its shape onto the wood. For a long moment I just sit there. Everything outside this room feels brittle, full of angles and schemes. But this letter, this moment, feels like breath, like a truth too quiet for anyone else to hear. My grandfather didn't speak much in the last years, but when he did, he said things that mattered. He saw how the company changed the people inside it, how success bloated into entitlement, how Nate began talking about investors, the way most people talk about prey. How Judith became fluent in manipulation disguised as grace. And how I, who once ran barefoot through these halls with paint-stained hands, refused to fit the mold. He saw me even when I didn't think anyone did. And now, years after he passed, his words reach me with more clarity than anything my family has said since I stepped off that plane. I slip the envelope into the drawer of my nightstand and turn off the light. The room dims into quiet shapes. My sketchbook leans against the desk leg. My suitcase rests unopened near the door. But the real weight, the fear, the confusion is lighter now. Because I'm not just reacting anymore. I'm remembering. And that memory is what will guide me. I lie back on the bed, eyes still open. The letter feels less like a message now and more like a map. A reminder that someone once trusted me with the full truth and expected me to carry it with integrity. Tomorrow I'll decide what to do next, who to trust, what to reveal. But tonight I hold the letter like a lifeline, not because I'm lost, but because I finally remember where I stand. I leave just after dawn. No note, no sound. The front door clicks shut behind me, soft and final. The maple trees outside are heavy with morning mist, their leaves dripping with condensation like they've wept in the night. I pull my coat tighter. My suitcase stays behind, unopened in the guest room. What I need is in my shoulder bag, the flash drive wrapped in fabric, my phone and the envelope I now carry everywhere. Nothing more. I walk 2 blocks before calling a rideshare just to make sure no one sees me leave. The car arrives quickly. I slide in, give the driver an address on the edge of downtown Stamford Millie's Cafe. It's quiet, tucked into the side of a brick building with ivy crawling over the signage. I haven't been there in almost a decade. Levi is already inside when I arrive. He sits in a corner booth back to the wall, one hand resting on a manila folder. He hasn't changed much, still sharp-eyed, clean-shaven, dressed like someone who knows how to blend in. He used to intern at the firm with Kelsey before switching to state work. Back then, he was always the one who stayed late to double-check contracts. No one else bothered to read. I slide into the seat across from him. He offers a nod and a faint smile. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. I didn't think I'd ever have to make this kind of call, I say, setting the flash drive gently on the table between us. He doesn't touch it yet, just looks at me, so it's true. Yes, I say, worse than I imagined. He sighs and opens the folder. You're not the first person to bring something forward, Grace, but you are the first with direct proof. What does that mean? It means your family's company has been on our radar for months. We've had complaints, subcontractors, investors, one whistleblower who tried to stay anonymous. Nothing stuck until now. I stare at the folder. Inside are clipped reports, legal notices, redacted emails. My name isn't on any of them yet. They used my name to forge investment documents. I say listed me as trustee. I have copies of everything. 3 contracts, all off-book high interest tied to shell companies. They've set me up to take the fall if anything collapses. Levi nods slowly. That's exactly what we feared. He opens the flash drive, plugs it into his laptop, and begins scanning through the files. His expression sharpens with each click. These weren't just mistakes, he mutters. They structured this. I know. He clicks a few more times, then stops and looks at me. Grace, listen carefully. Do not sign anything. Don't verbally agree to anything. If they get even a hint of implied consent, they'll use it to frame your involvement. They already tried. He taps the manila folder. You're lucky you haven't triggered liability yet, but they're running out of time. If the trust matures and the assets remain under your sole name, they lose their leverage. And if I give them access, I ask, even though I already know the answer. You're finished, he says flatly. They'll drain the account, assign you as the fiduciary for projects already bleeding cash, and when the debts come calling, you'll be the one on record, not them. I sit back. The waitress comes over, places a teacup in front of me, and walks away. I don't touch it. What happens now, I ask. You're going to meet someone Levi says, Joseph Reed. He's an estate lawyer, handled your grandfather's trust. We've worked with him before. He knows what to look for and how to protect beneficiaries from this kind of thing. He's still practicing. Selective cases, but this one he'll take. I nod. Levi leans forward. Grace, I'm going to be honest. If they're desperate enough to forge your signature, they're desperate enough to go further. This won't stay civil forever. You need to stay ahead of them. I'm not looking to make this personal, I say. It already is, he replies. But you can still be the one who comes out clean. He pulls a business card from his folder and slides it across the table. Joseph Reed. A handwritten address on the back New Haven Old Quarter. I pocket it. Levi closes his laptop. Don't go back to the house. I wasn't planning to. He gives a short nod, then rises. You did the right thing, Grace. That flash drive, someone's going to try and bury it. Don't let them. I watch him leave the manila folder tucked back under his arm. My tea sits untouched. Outside, the sky is beginning to clear. I step out into the sharp spring air and start walking toward the next step, each movement purposeful. At the edge of the block, I pause and look back. Through the cafe window, the booth sits empty now, save for the teacup and the echo of a conversation I won't forget. There's no drama, no shouting, just a shift. One foot leaving the trap, one hand holding proof, and a plan forming in silence. The dining room looks the same as it did when I arrived, polished wood, white linen, cold waffles. But tonight, the lighting is lower. The usual glamour is dimmed, as if even the house is holding its breath. I requested this meeting 2 days ago. I framed it gently, just enough to ease suspicion. Told them I wanted to talk. Clear the air, rebuild trust. They agreed quickly, almost eagerly. They thought I was caving. I sit at the head of the table. Not a place I've ever claimed before, but tonight I take it without asking. Nate sits across from me, jaw set, but relaxed. Kelsey sits next to him, arms folded. Judith lingers at the end, her hands clasped on the table as if in prayer. The fireplace flickers again, symmetrical and staged. No one speaks at first. I appreciate you all coming, I say calmly. I know the last few days have been tense. Judith smiles tightly. We're just glad you're ready to move forward. I am, I reply, but first I need to share something. I reach into my bag and take out the USB, the one labeled in black ink winterproof. I slide it into the small port on my laptop and angle the screen so they can all see. A quiet hum fills the room as the projector on the bookshelf powers up, casting a square of light onto the far wall. What is this? Nate asks. I don't answer. I click play. The video begins. It's grainy but clear. A recording from the internal office system pulled by Levi through archived backups. Nate is speaking on a call. His voice clipped and casual. If Grace signs it, it's clean. No questions. The documents are already ready, just waiting on her signature. The trustee clause is tight enough to make it stick. She won't know until the damage is already done. Judith shifts. Kelsey looks up startled. Nate blinks slowly. What is this, some kind of joke? The next frame plays another call, this time with Bernard, the family lawyer, his voice measured. If she agrees before the birthday, she'll be tied to the asset control automatically. The legal framing is done. If we use emotional leverage, she won't question it. I pause the video. The screen freezes on Nate's face mid-sentence. Judith's voice is quiet. Where did you get that? I look at her, then Nate. Does it matter? Kelsey speaks for the first time. Did you know about this? She asks Nate, her voice barely above a whisper. Nate doesn't answer. I pull out the printed trust clause next, the one signed by my grandfather. I place it gently on the table next to the paused video. This document, I say, outlines the conditions of my inheritance. It includes a clause your lawyer conveniently left out of the summaries you gave me. It states that any attempt to manipulate, coerce, or misrepresent my consent will trigger immediate suspension of access by all associated parties. Judith swallows hard. You've misunderstood. No, I say calm and final, I haven't. I glance at Nate. You tried to use my name to cover the financial collapse of this company. You listed me as a trustee without my consent. You fabricated my signature. And if I hadn't checked, hadn't dug, I'd be the one answering for loans. You took out with offshore firms under shell corporations. Kelsey pushes back from the table slightly, the chair legs scraping the floor. I continue. You didn't just ask me for help. You built a paper trail designed to trap me, and you did it while calling it family loyalty. Nate finally speaks, tone clipped. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I say again, I'm giving you a chance to hear it quietly before it gets louder. I reach into my folder and remove a sealed envelope. This is a statement from Joseph Reed, Grandpa's estate lawyer. It confirms everything I just said, and it's already been reviewed by the Connecticut Department of Justice. Judith's face goes pale. Her fingers twitch, but she doesn't reach for the document. Kelsey stares at Nate. You said it was just a short-term fix, that she'd be covered. Nate glares at her. You weren't supposed to bring her into this. She's my sister-in-law, Kelsey snaps, not collateral. I stand. This is your warning. I say I won't file charges. Not today. But if you make one more move, financial, legal, personal, if you so much as send a friendly email disguised as a peace offering, this all goes public. Judith opens her mouth, but I hold up a hand. I'm not negotiating, I'm protecting myself. The screen behind me still shows Nate's frozen face. The USB light continues to blink steadily in the laptop. The air feels heavy even though no one is speaking. I pack the document slowly. No rush, letting the silence linger. Nate tries again, voice lower now. We're your family, Grace. You should have remembered that I say, closing the lid of the laptop before you decided I was expendable. I leave the room without a sound. My footsteps echo down the hallway. I don't look back. Some truths don't need yelling. Some power isn't loud. And sometimes the sharpest revenge is quiet. Just enough to be heard, just enough to be believed, just enough to end it. 3 months have passed since the meeting in the dining room, since the video played, since the silence afterward told me more than any apology ever could. It's late summer now in Vermont. The fields are alive again. The air smells like wildflowers and wood shavings, and the maple trees we replanted have taken root. Their leaves are still young, still small, but they hold on in the wind. The estate doesn't feel like the past anymore. It feels like a beginning. We turned the barn into a studio. Sunlight pours through the new skylights, catching on suspended glass jars full of brushes and dye. The main house holds 12 women, now each of them different. A single mother from Chicago who paints murals. A former architect rebuilding her creative life after burnout. A teenager from Boston who writes poetry between math problems. They wake early. They take turns cooking. They don't ask each other for anything except truth. I walk through the garden slowly. Someone's built a makeshift bench near the lilac bushes. 2 girls sit there now, side by side, sketchbooks open on their laps. One is laughing. The other holds a pencil delicately between 2 fingers, like it might fly away if she presses too hard. The sound of hammers and soft music drifts from the barn. Inside, someone's cutting plywood for a new table. There are no design briefs, no investor check-ins, just people working for the sake of creation. This was always what my grandfather wanted. Not a monument, a place to restore, to remember. The entry hall is quieter today. Sunlight spills in through the front window, casting patterns across the floor. On the wall beside the door, just above the coat hooks, hangs a new frame. Inside, it is the green envelope. I mounted it carefully without altering a thing. His handwriting is still clear. For Grace Spring. Some days residents ask about it. I tell them it's from someone who saw me before I saw myself. Next to it is a small brass plate I had made. It reads, "You are allowed to say no." The letter from my mother arrived last week. It came in a plain envelope, no return address, but I recognized the cursive immediately. Her handwriting was always neat, always even, the kind of hand that belonged to someone who measured every word before speaking. She wrote that she understood if I never responded. She said the sentence had given her space to think, really think for the first time, that when you spend your life performing, you start to believe the role. She asked about the maple trees, about whether I'd kept the sketchbooks from when I was little, about the house. She didn't ask for forgiveness, and that oddly made it easier to read. I haven't replied, I don't think I will. Some people believe healing has to come with reconciliation, but I don't not anymore. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them is to close the door gently and keep walking. I place the letter in a drawer in the front office beside old bills and light bulb warranties. I don't frame it. I don't reread it. Instead, I walk back outside into the air that smells of paint and pine. There's a small stretch of land just beyond the gardens where the original trees had been cleared long ago. We planted saplings there in April, red maple, sugar maple, and one white birch in the middle. They stand in uneven rows, now still too young to cast much shade, but they'll grow. Everything here is growing. I hear footsteps behind me, one of the residents, Mariah, jogging up the path with 2 mugs of tea. I made mint, she says, holding one out. Thanks, I say, taking it. The mug is warm in my hands. She pauses beside me, looking at the trees. You ever think he knew this would happen? My grandfather. She nods. I think he hoped I say. We stand there quietly. The breeze moves the branches gently. The house stands behind us, solid but softened by ivy and time. There's no sign outside, no name carved into stone, just a mailbox painted deep green and a note on the door that says, "Here you start again." Inside, the residents have begun to add their own touches. A wall of pinned poems, shelves of small ceramic bowls, a clothesline strung with indigo scarves dyed from last month's workshop. I don't direct, I listen. Each afternoon, I walk the property once, not to supervise, just to see. Some days, I'm invited into the studio to look at a new sketch or a half-finished painting. Other days, I'm handed nothing more than a quiet wave. That's enough. Because peace isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the sound of pencils scratching paper, or laughter echoing from the far side of the barn, or footsteps returning at the end of the day. No one here asks about the company. No one mentions my last name. To them, I'm Grace. Not an heiress, not a trust holder, not the woman who once played a video in a room full of stunned silence. Just Grace. The sun dips lower, brushing gold across the hills. I take a slow sip of the tea, the mint clean and warm against my tongue. Behind me, through the open window of the house, I can see the envelope on the wall, green unmoving. And beside it, a new line someone added beneath the plaque. Start again, but only on your own terms. I didn't write it, but I understand it. Better than ever. Backstage is quiet, just the low hum of overhead lights and the occasional clink of a water bottle set down too hard. The green room has no mirrors, only a pale gray wall and 2 chairs. I sit in one, holding my folded speech in both hands. The locket around my neck feels heavier than usual. Inside is a photo of my grandfather taken by the window of the Vermont house. Sun streaking across his face. I don't open it. I don't need to. My name is called over a soft microphone. I rise. Out front, the conference hall buzzes quietly. The Global Design and Ethics Forum draws everyone from startup founders to policy scholars. The audience is full, but no one is fidgeting. People came to listen. The stage is simple, a white backdrop, a clear podium, no slideshow. I step up to the mic and take a breath. My name is Grace Walters. I begin voice. Even I'm a designer by trade, a founder by circumstance, and for a while, a daughter who didn't speak up when it mattered. The room settles further. I grew up in a family where legacy meant more than language, where appearances were polished but the foundations underneath were quietly eroding. I didn't notice at first. Or maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want to admit that love and loyalty can coexist with control. I glanced down, not at the paper, but at the edge of the stage, then back up. 3 months ago, I found forged documents with my name on them. Financial authorizations, liability clauses I was being used not just as a fallback plan, but as a shield. My inheritance left to me by my grandfather was never meant to be a tool for manipulation, but it became one. A few people shift in their chairs, not restlessly, thoughtfully. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I found proof, I found my voice. And I learned that integrity doesn't always look like a grand gesture. Sometimes it's a soft no, a locked door, a signature withheld. A pause. The silence welcomes it. There's a line from a letter I carry with me. It was written by my grandfather. He said, "Families don't fall apart all at once. They rot from the inside out, and when enough people pretend not to see it, the damage becomes tradition." I let that settle before continuing. Today, I run a space in Vermont where women create not because someone asked them to prove their worth, but because someone gave them the space to remember it. There's no applause, just stillness, the good kind. I used to think truth was only powerful when loud, but sometimes the strongest truths are quiet, measured unflinching. That's what I came to share. I thank them and step down. There's a murmur afterward, not the buzz of excitement but of understanding. A few people nod. A few wipe their eyes. No one rushes forward. It's not that kind of story. But just before I leave the hall, a woman approaches. She's around 60 silver streaks in her hair, wearing a soft green scarf. Grace, she says gently, I don't mean to intrude. You're not. I haven't spoken to my daughter in 8 years, she says. Not since she called out something I chose not to see. Something her father did today. You made me understand why she walked away and why I should have followed. Her voice cracks, but she holds her ground. I'm going to write her tonight, not to justify, just to acknowledge. I place a hand on hers. That's enough. She nods, presses the scarf to her cheek, and walks away. I don't stay for the rest of the forum. I step outside into the late afternoon light. The Chicago skyline stretches wide in front of me, clean lines and hard silhouettes glowing orange at the edges. I find a bench just past the sidewalk and sit. The locket rests against my collarbone. This isn't victory. There are no headlines, no accolades, just a sense that something somewhere quietly settled. In the distance, a train rumbles. A woman laughs on a phone call. Wind rustles the edge of my jacket. And I realize I'm no longer trying to be heard. I already am. Grace Walters did not win with noise. She won by standing still when others moved against her, by holding her ground when it would have been easier to let go. Her story is not one of revenge, but of return to integrity, to truth to herself. She chose boundaries over belonging, protection over peacekeeping, and in doing so, she reminded us that being unseen does not mean being powerless, that the quietest choices often carry the deepest strength. If you have ever felt erased, overlooked, or pressured to sacrifice your truth for someone else's comfort, let this be a reminder: your voice matters. Your no holds weight, and your worth is not tied to what others expect you to carry. If Grace's journey moved you, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments, follow for more stories like this, and let your story be the next one told.